We are here in the Plaque Gallery at the Baseball Hall of Fame, or officially the National Baseball Hall of Fame and Museum. It's the Plaque Gallery itself. I went over and visited Willie Mays and Al Kaline side by side on the wall. Where do you go, Jason?
I went to Rickey Henderson yesterday.
Oh, nice.
Needed to pay respects.
Absolutely. This, by the way, let's talk about what used to be called the Veterans Committee. It's now called the ERA Committee. Contemporary baseball era. Fred McGriff, resounding 16 votes. That was unanimous. And it was seen as a celebration of a guy who was overlooked on the writer's ballot, but also a lot of support for two guys who used to get support, guys, the good guys and great players of the 80s, Mattingly and Murphy, and Curt Schilling, who's a tremendous candidate and somehow didn't get in for a variety of reasons. And you see at the bottom, who else was on there? Bonds, Clemens, Palmeiro, getting fewer than 4 votes apiece. Back here, Brian Kenny with Jason Stark, Joel Sherman, John Morosi. Again, our pleasure to be here at the Hall of Fame and full Hall of Fame coverage for you. The real action, as I mentioned, is not even just what about the next Veterans Committee and how do you vote? You've been on these committees before, but the screening committee for the Veterans Committee, they're going to try to whittle this list down to 8 players. Now, I've long been an advocate of Dwight Evans and Keith Hernandez. On top of that, I'm a yes on Dale Murphy, big yes on Don Mattingly. People's opinions are changing there. Kenny Lofton fell off the ballot. Bernie Williams fell off the ballot. And now you're still going to have Bonds and Clemens eligible. Curt Schilling, strong candidate. Why don't you add to that Gary Sheffield, Jeff Kent, again, new strong candidates. How do you even get to 8? And then how do you get down from there where you have to get down, Jason, maximum 3 votes?
I know. That committee actually meets for the first time in 2 weeks. They won't come up with the final list until November, but wouldn't you like to be a fly on that wall? I would.
Right. But it's legit. You should be in that room. It's legitimately difficult.
How are they going to do it? Here's a question for you. Bonds and Clemens went nowhere last time. It was a resounding rejection of those guys and the whole PED era. But what if Bonds and Clemens are not even on the ballot next time?
Yeah.
You're telling me that won't be a huge headline?
Yeah, that's plausible. It's understandable, and yet, yeah, it would create this, oh, they're blackballing me again, right? And even though they've had a shot on the Veterans Committee already. If you were on the screening committee, would you put Bonds and Clemens on there?
I voted for Bonds and Clemens every year. They were on the ballot, so I would do it. But I would just say an overarching thing about the 14 names you just showed. If you believe in a bigger Hall of Fame, I think you should go 14 for 14 there.
You could.
Like,
you could do it.
Those are Hall of Famers.
You could do it. Yeah.
I don't
crazy.
mean they're in here, but like Scott Rowland and Todd Helton got in. I don't know that they stand out against those 14 guys. Like, I think that's the level of player they are. And if you think that where that is, the 1.5%, 2%, whatever that is, belong in this hall, I think everyone on that list belongs on the hall. The question is your borderline. And so therefore, I do think it's a bloodbath to decide who even gets on the ballot, because I can make a case that they're all very similar.
And I would say again, Bonds and Clemens, you have to explain away things. I know you vote for them, but you have to explain away things, whereas Murphy and Mattingly, you just feel good about it. Right. So why can't we just feel good about it?
So, BK, to your point, and with Joel, I voted every year I had a ballot for both Bonds and Clemens, but I would take the different approach with this ballot. I would say we already saw on the Contemporary Era Committee that there was not support for them. So they should be put aside for this time, and let's look at some new candidates who have not had, in my view, their fair hearing. Certainly, Lou Whitaker, Lofton, Williams, all of whom are one and done. None of them should have been one and done. It's now time to take up those cases and more thoroughly vet out their credentials for this great hall and not relitigate 2 players in the case of Bonds and Clemens who were evaluated ad nauseum by our group. And by the way, a majority of us, a majority of the writers, voted for Bonds and voted for Clemens, but they did not reach 75%. They had plenty, in my view, of a fair hearing from our electorate and our group.
Again, I think there are some players here who have been overlooked that there finally will be an opportunity. I almost want to see I want to see this bifurcated. You got to split this up into 2, and I change the year, or just say, look, we're not going to go every 3rd year, because they've picked through the golden era pretty well. Dick Allen went in, Jim Cott has gotten in. You've gotten most of those players. So, Maury Wills and Ken Boyer are still out there, Allie Reynolds. But for the most part, those decades, Jason, am I right? They've been picked through very well.
Absolutely. Yeah, and look, I'll give the Hall of Fame great credit. They have constantly adjusted how they define these eras. But you have Josh Rawitz on the show later. You should ask him about this. There is so much merit to what you're talking about. Let's have more attention for this group and more chances for this group.
And in their defense as well, remember years ago, they said, let's get from the 19th century, while there's scholarship, while there's still maybe somebody alive that saw somebody, let's get as many as they can in. Negro Leagues, same thing. Let's get as many from the Negro Leagues in while we can, maybe either while they're alive or while people could see them play. And they've done that. Now I think it's time to pay attention to this.